Hey everybody, welcome to South Bay Sit Downs. This is Adam Vardaresian again. We are welcoming the Marinconz brothers today. First, we have Kyle Marinconz, who started in our program with Cali and Trotsky baseball when he was a 12-year-old. Moved on to play his high school baseball at Valley Christian before committing to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. 3 years at Cal Poly, getting drafted after his junior year in the 24th round with the Nationals. Kyle, how's it going, man?
Bart, how you doing?
Good. And then we got, you too. We got Nick right next to you. Started 11U for us. Also, Valley Christian High School was a 4-year starter there, 3-time CCS champion, current freshman at Cal Poly. Nick, what's going on?
Bart, always good to see you, brother.
You too, man. You too. So where are you guys staying these days with the quarantine and the shelter in place?
Yeah, so we're in San Luis Obispo right now, just trying to get as much work in as we can. Pretty limited, obviously, just like everybody else. But, we're doing our best to stay in shape, and you never know when they're going to call us back and when this thing's going to be over. So we're just working as hard as we can, and hopefully soon they call us back. I'm trying to go back. I was ready to go, and I think I'm still ready to go.
Good. Right. And so what does a typical day look like for you guys, Nick? Can you give us a little insight?
We're just trying to work out, trying to do whatever we can possible, to stay in shape, get ready for whenever they call us back, and try to get ready for the next season.
Yeah, so we wake up around probably 9 o'clock and get some breakfast, get some food in us, and then we'll go to the field real quick and do as much stuff as we can outdoors, just like some body weight stuff, and then we'll play catch and stuff. But, you can't have any like coaches and stuff on the field. So we just do as much as we can with each other. That's why we're both here. It's limited, but you get as much work in as you can every day.
You guys at Cal Poly working out?
Yeah, we're in slow right now.
Okay, nice. All right, cool, man. So, I wanted to kind of ask, Nick, just kind of start with you. Me being a little brother as well, you're kind of lucky to have the kind of big brother. Talk about kind of growing, having Kyle, a couple years old, everything, and what it did for you.
It's very cool to have him in my life. Very blessed, especially when I was younger. He always told me what I needed to prepare for, and I took his advice, and I worked hard, and I believe that I have an edge over some people, and I'm very blessed to have him in my life, and he's helped me a lot throughout my whole career through baseball.
Nice. Kyle, what's it like having a little brother and helping him along the way?
Well, I went through most of the stuff. My career, I've actually just gone through kind of blind. I went to high school blind. I was the first one. I went and do summer ball blind. I went to college blind, pro ball blind. But you know what? It made me who I am today. And there's so much adversity that's gone along the path with that, that I am lucky enough to share it with someone like Nico. I knew what it took to be great in high school. I knew what it took to be great in summer ball. I knew what it took to be great in college and in pro ball. And I've just kind of passed down just stuff I've learned. I always learn new things. I always take from coaches in different programs. And he's lucky enough to have somebody above him that has gone through that and told him what's expected of you at the next level. And I think that's like one of the main things that people or players these days don't get is what is coming for you at the next level, what they're going to expect of you, how to perform well, when things go wrong, what to do. And, I try to guide him, but everybody's their own player, and he's a different player than me. He always has been, but he has an edge to that. He knows what to expect, and he has better talent. He watches better talent all the time, so he knows what he has to be at and like to get to that level. So I think that's given him a little edge. But I have fun with him, man. It's great to work with him. He works his butt off. He doesn't take it for granted, and he really shows that on the field with how he plays.
And that is one thing to you. I know you kind of alluded to it, where you were going into a lot of the situations and going into college a little bit blind. But tell us a little bit, about your recruiting story. I know for me, you guys had two very, very different recruiting stories, where for you, Kyle, you you absolutely had to prove it every step of the way, without getting into too much detail. You had to show up every day and you had to perform, and you always did for us. And then, there were always doubts, there were always questions, whether it was speed or size, but something that you focused on and worked your tail off to, to close the gap on that. I know I was telling Coach Tommy the other day, like you were the guy that I started to saying, it might not be a stand-up double. Kyle might have to slide into second base, but he's hitting a double. So, it might not be a stand-up quite yet. He's working on it, but the boy can hit. So, but you had to prove it. You did it every step. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's long story short, but, it started, I played for Taboo, and we won a Travel Ball World Series in Florida. And about 2 weeks after that, they cut me. I was 11 years old. It was probably the toughest time in my baseball career, one of the toughest times. I didn't know if I was going to just keep going with it, because that was like the real first time anybody ever told me I wasn't good enough to play with them at the next level. And then I found you guys. I found you, Vart, in particular, and you gave me a chance to play 2 years up. And, I didn't take that for granted. And I think that was one of the main things of, proving to myself that I can compete at that level. And that's when I started really working hard. And I was always undersized. I love every coach I've ever had, every single one of them, but I know every single one of them at some point has doubted my abilities. And I'm not blind to that. And, that just kind of drives me to do what I do, the extra work, always going into the cages, always going into the weight room, because I have to. And I think that that's what separates me from most players. I use that as a way to say, hey, I'm going to do this extra work to prove to you that I'm going to be better on the field, and it makes me better on the field. And if I didn't really have that, and if I didn't have that doubt, I think that it would have been a different turnout for me. So I'm pretty blessed to have that. It sucked when I was going through it, but it's still happening to this day. And everybody has doubters, and the more you go up, the more doubters there are. And that's just kind of like something that you use to prove people wrong, or at least I do. So, that's kind of a little bit of my story. Do you want me to touch on the recruiting side of it?
Well, yeah, I know for you, always playing with a chip on your shoulder, that's kind of one thing that, your competitiveness was never questioned. That was one thing that you knew that was coming every single day. But yeah, tell us a little bit about the Cal Poly recruitment side of things. And then after that, Nick, I'd like to go into yours as well.
Yeah. So I had an interesting recruiting. I was actually looking at Midwest schools. My dad is from Purdue and my mom went to Indiana, and I wanted to play at Purdue really bad. I went there in 8th grade. I went there as a freshman in high school, and both times they just kind of overlooked me because I hadn't grown yet. I was still really small, undersized, but everybody always just said, oh, he can hit, and so I started really, really working on the other stuff too, as much as I was working on hitting, and I got better. I got faster in my 60. I got bigger in the weight room. I worked on my defense a lot. I worked on my arm, and I continued to work on my hitting. And I was seen first by Thomas Eager, who is now at Stanford. He saw me in the cage hitting, and he said, "I want you to come down to a camp." And I went down there as a freshman, I think, in high school, and I did terrible, absolutely terrible. I ran like what was it? Almost an 860, maybe 7.9, I would say. Yep. I was throwing grenades to first base. I hit well, but I didn't do anything else well. And they were kind of like, yeah, we don't know. And they pretty much passed up on me like everybody else. And so I just kept grinding. And I kept going to camps there because I fell in love with how Coach Lee knew the game and how he, even his campers, they took videos of his campers and he would break them down regardless of who the camper was. And I was like, you know what, if he cares this much about campers, he's going to care even more about me being better at his college. And so I just worked my butt off to play there. And I was lucky enough to keep going to camps. And one day I did really well. And they're like, hey, well, let's start looking at him. And then I started performing, and the rest took care of itself.
Yeah, I definitely remember those days for sure. I remember the 7.8s and the 7.9s.
Oh yeah.
That's when you were for sure sliding feet first into second. But you know, for you, Nick, your story was a little bit different. Not that it was an easy path. You know, you dealt with your own adversity going through your career. But I mean, you were a guy. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think you committed to Cal Poly prior to playing a high school inning. You know, before even stepping on a high school field. So, you know, and we'll go into a little bit of your story too, and some of the adversity that you battled with. But tell me a little bit about that, making the decision so early, and maybe you know, kind of how it all went about.
So my road was very different. I always grew up, again, him telling me what I needed to prepare for. But I always grew up going to Cal Poly camps I actually played with Kyle in one of the Cal Poly camps. And I mean, I started getting looked at my freshman year during the fall. I think UCLA, Long Beach, and Cal Poly in Santa Clara were looking at me. And Santa Clara was my first offer. But I decided to commit to Cal Poly in October, my freshman year. I committed early just because I thought it was the best fit for me. And just because my brother was there and the coaches, I loved the coaches. And I just thought it was the best fit for me.
So even going into that, and I alluded to some of the adversity. I know for you, you know, as a high school senior playing at Valley, you know, played the first 8 games, started catching fire a little bit, and then had an injury. So basically losing a majority of your senior year, and then now with everything with the quarantine and college baseball losing their season, I mean, you know, good. You got to battle that too. So I know you had a chance to play some summer ball, which was great. Made a splash when you played in summer. First AV back from the injury goes Yambo. But really, I mean, that's some pretty big adversity over the last couple of years that you've had to deal with, losing those seasons. So you got to be going crazy or crazier than everyone else when it comes to this. Tell us about that. Like, what's that been like to try to deal with and handle?
I definitely have a different outlook on life and in baseball. During that time, it was probably one of the toughest times during my life. You know, I always thought I couldn't really do anything on the field. I was watching all my teammates play, and especially watching them win another CCS championship when I was in the dugout, which is very hard. But I think it has changed me mentally and physically. I've gotten a lot stronger. But yeah, that's the only biggest adversity I've ever gone through in my life. So it has really changed me.
I mean, I remember when he was going through that, and, you know, I went through it with him, and so did my parents. And, you know, luckily I knock on wood, I haven't had a serious injury that's made me sit out like that. But, you know, it was tough on him. I mean, he was not, it wasn't good. And, you know, it really was even tougher that he had to go through the college thing, people doubting that he was going to be able to play in college, be ready for college. I mean, you were doubted pretty heavy, and he came back, and it's a new outlook. You know, he's a different player now. I watch him play, and he's focused. He knows that, you know, sometimes you take the game for granted. I mean, everybody's guilty of it at some point in their life. You know, play so much. I mean, especially I've taken the game for granted in the minor leagues, where it's like, man, this is another game. It's game 140. You know, but it still matters. I mean, the game can be taken away from you like that. And when it does, you're going to regret that feeling. So, you know, it's definitely a life changer when stuff like that happens to you. And I think it really came out better for him.
Nice. Yeah, man, that was heartbreaking. I knew Nick was pretty good when he was young, man. I remember him like 11 years old, 12 years old. I was starting batting practice to him. He was just crushing balls to the pull side. But
some things don't change, man. Some things don't change. It's all right. If it works, it works.
How to go oppo, you know?
Yeah, I was like, man, this kid crushes the ball, but I have not seen him hit a ball to the right side one time, but maybe he have to.
Oh, man.
No, it was good.
Sounds like me at the old Saratoga.
Oh, yeah. I mean, of course, with the short course.
Yeah, there are a couple legendary stories. One, I think Nick was the youngest player ever to play on our Trosky White team as a freshman. I think the only one we had. And then when Kyle would come and do scrimmages at Saratoga, I tried to convince him, like, hey, man, if you played here every day, you probably hit 25 jabs.
You almost convinced.
Every weekend, this guy's hitting a homer off somebody. There's a good story. We had a kid who parents came to do some recording of his pitching that weekend to to kind of start a college recruiting video. And Kyle hits one of the furthest balls I have seen hit at Saratoga. And in the background, you hear me go, "Oh my God." And then the parents sent me the video, and I'm like, you might want to cut out that 30 seconds of Kyle homering and him rounding the bases with me in the background. But yeah, there's some pretty good stories with these boys.
I got some good memories from that field. Jeez.
It must have been a fun field to hit on, that's for sure.
Oh my Lord. The BP on that field, especially when Bart was throwing to me, it was unbelievable.
Still miss that BP, Bart.
Oh yeah.
Anytime, dude. Hey, when this is all done, man, I'm in.
Hey,
I'll throw you guys on there every day.
Yes, 100%.
Awesome. So Nick, I want to get in with you first and ask you the first question. Ask you a question. I want to know what the biggest difference is from high school to college and your experience. What talk about that.
Great question.
I would say just always being on your own. You know, in high school, there's no one, or there's always someone to hold your hand through stuff. In college, there's no one to hold your hand through stuff. But just like knowing when to, you know, go to the field on time, when to eat, trying to get good food in, holding yourself accountable, like trying to do your own extra work.
In class,
Trying to do your homework. But also, I would say the days are much longer. You know, in college, you're waking up at 5:30 in the morning and you're grinding through that whole day up until 9 p.m. And you got to go to bed early and you got to wake up and do it again. So the days are much longer.
Yeah.
What about on the field, Nick? What about for you? What's been the biggest change for you on the field that you've had to make an adjustment on?
I would say
your communication.
My communication in high school, I didn't really talk very much, and in Coach Lee really gets into me to talk a lot, and it's very hard for me because I grew up not talking on the field, and especially at shortstop, you have to talk a lot. So,
what was the hardest part of that? Like, what was the learning curve?
I mean, after every, I would say during the inter squad, after every pitch, he would make me yell out to the pitcher something and talk to my infield and control the infield, which I didn't do in high school. So it was tough for me. It was just a different feeling.
That's good stuff. Now, Kyle, obviously you're playing pro ball now. What's the difference between college and pro and, you know, the daily life and things like that?
Well, you got to become a man real quick. You're pretty much on your own, even more than college. Everything is do what you want. We don't care if you do it or not. I mean, your lifts are optional. They want you to lift, but if you don't want to lift, you don't have to lift. It's your career, right? And I would say that's a huge jump for a lot of people. That's why a lot of high school guys struggle with it. Living on your own like that is pretty intense, especially out of high school. Another thing is, I mean, it's the best of the best. Everybody you play with has a chance. That's why they got drafted, is because they have a chance to make it to the big leagues. And personally, in my mind, I don't think that there's much talent separation between the big leagues and some of the minor league levels. Everybody is very, very, very talented. The guy next to you, the guy you're competing with, is very, very talented. But it comes down to just if you have it mentally, if you can grind through it, if you trust yourself, if you believe in yourself. I think that's the biggest jump is being on a field with people who are so talented and it's not your starting nine are the best players and everybody else kind of falls off a little bit or is not as talented. It's your starting nine and everybody in your dugout, everybody in your bullpen. And whether or not people believe this, they demand way more out of you in pro ball. They just don't yell at you as much, but they want you to be perfect. They expect you to be perfect. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of fans. And those are the main differences for me. But I mean, I would also like to touch on like how you deal with that is you got to believe in yourself. I mean, for all the people like who are going to watch this and who get this opportunity or want to get this opportunity, you have to believe in yourself, like your abilities. I mean, you're there for a reason, regardless of if bad stuff happens, if you're not doing well at that point, if life seems to become like crashing down on you, you really have to grind through it and trust that you are the guy for the job. I mean, that's how all those guys make it, in my opinion.
You mentioned the grind of it all, especially at the professional level. I know both of you boys have some pretty interesting stories about the grind and specific road trips. Nick, why don't you start and tell us? I know when you were in the Northwoods this past summer, you had a pretty interesting road trip. Tell us a little bit about that grind for you.
It was definitely the toughest road trip, but it was also one of the best ones for me. We made the championship game for the Northwoods, and we traveled 12 hours to Traverse City, Michigan. We ended up playing the next day. We ended up losing, but we played in front of about 8,000 fans, which was amazing. And we lost. We got right back on the bus that night, drove 12 hours back, and we ended up getting in at like 4 a.m. And I think I had to fly back home the next day, which was pretty tough.
Dang. Yeah, that's pretty serious. Kyle, you got one too, right?
I do have one. I have two actually. I don't know. Do we have time for two?
Yeah, let's go. I mean, what else we got going?
I got this last year in pro ball. I was probably on game 115, 120-ish. I had like about 25, 30 more left. So my body's worn down. I hadn't had a day off in about 40 days or so, 30 days, I would say. And we were coming back on a 15-hour bus trip. And I got the call up to high A in the locker room after the game that finished at 12 o'clock. It went into extra innings. The next day was a day off for us, so we traveled back home through the night, got it back in at 7 a.m. They wanted me to be packed and ready to go out of my host family's house by 8 o'clock in the morning. So I had about an hour and a half to go home and get back to the field with all my stuff packed up. So I went home on no sleep, packed everything up, grabbed everything, left some stuff at my host family's house, of course, accidentally because I was in such a rush. Drove 3 hours to high A, and I'm on no sleep. I'm exhausted. I've been just lugging stuff around everywhere. I roll into the clubhouse about an hour and a half before game time with my entire life in my hands. I got all my clothes, my toiletry bag, my baseball bag, my backpack, everything. And I put it in the clubhouse, and everybody's looking at me like, you didn't go to the hotel first or whatever? I'm like, no, I didn't have time. And I look at the lineup, and they're like, you're in there. And I was like, oh, I'm in there? Like, right away? And they're like, yeah, you're in there. I'm like, all right. No BP, nothing. Played my first game in high A. And I actually didn't do too bad. I think I got one hit or something like that, maybe an RBI, made my plays. But then I went home. Well, I didn't have a home. I went to the hotel room for the night. They ended up getting me a host family. I was there for about a week and a half. And then the guys came back. One guy who's injured came back, and the other guy who's playing for the Puerto Rican national team came back. And I wasn't getting enough reps and stuff. So they sent me back down to low A, and the same thing happened. It was on an off day. I got driven back. I had to repack up my stuff from the host family's house, got driven back. And this time I was expecting to play in that game. Ended up playing second base that game and getting 2 or 3 hits that night. But you know, life's crazy. Another funny story. Unfortunately, I wasn't there for this, but all my boys were calling me and stuff because this is right when I got moved up to high. It was the same year, but they were on a bus, and the bus broke down in the middle of nowhere, and there was no gas station, nothing, and they were stranded there for like 8 hours and missed the game. They missed the game, missed the minor league game, and they had to remake it up the next day because the bus blew up. Like the engine like blew up, and it took them like 5 or 6 hours to get a bus into the middle of a farmland. Like, it was crazy. Like, they were all Snapchatting me and stuff, and it looked like a wild time. No air conditioning, probably 95 degrees outside. It was wild.
Unbelievable. Well, hey, kind of moving into the next section. That was some pretty good stories here. We might be able to get some more out of you guys here. We finish all these conversations up with our South Bay 6-pack of questions, led by Tommy Cardiel. So you guys are gonna have to. You guys are both gonna have to get all 6 of these. See what we get. Tom, why don't you go ahead and shoot?
Shoot or shoot.
Yeah, I'm keeping it light. So we'll start with you, Kyle. Kyle, what's your most embarrassing baseball moment?
Oh, this is a good one. Okay, so I was in short season, just got drafted. My body was tired. I mean, we were getting put through a lot of work before the games and stuff. And one day I decided to take a nap before the game. It was a rain delay. I was sitting there. I got tired, so I put a little sweatshirt behind my head and dozed off. Everybody cleared out of the locker room, and they grabbed all their stuff and put it outside. And they had the pitching coach. They had a guy in the shower videotaping. Couldn't see him. They had the pitching coach come in. He's a Latino pitching coach, so he's like broken English kind of, and he wakes me up screaming at me, just, "What are you doing? Get ready. You're missing the game." I wake up into a full panic. He's like in my ear yelling at me to put my pants on. He's like, "You're better than this. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, how are you going to sleep before a game?" And I'm just throwing on my pants, my belt, what jersey we're wearing. I'm just throwing stuff on. I'm like, I need to make it out to the field right now. And I take one step out of the clubhouse, and everybody has their phone, and everybody is crying, laughing. And I just look at them, shut the door, and walk back in and go right back to bed.
That's an awesome one. That's awesome. That's a good one. Nick,
Sure.
good luck.
It might be on Minor League Grinders. I'm not sure.
Really?
Instagram page.
We got to find that. That's for sure. Nick, now your turn, man. Good luck following that one.
Yeah. I would say my senior year during the fall, I came down to Cal Poly to take grounders with Coach Lee, Kyle, and Brooks Lee. And we ended up taking ground balls for like an hour. And I was so dead tired, and I just couldn't get through it for some reason. And my face was turning white, and I was very dizzy. But we ended up stopping, and we were about to hit, and I ended up throwing up behind home plate. And Coach Lee I believe Coach Lee was videotaping me while I was throwing up, because he was videotaping Kyle while he was hitting. And that was probably one of the biggest moments.
And then had to turn the screen on you to make sure he captured the
Hey, you know what? He didn't say a word to him, and I'm waiting one day for him to bring it out on him. I've been waiting for that.
Oh, it's coming. Yeah, absolutely. It's coming at some point.
I keep telling him it is 100% coming. He does not forget stuff like that.
You don't erase those videos either. You don't erase those.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
No. All right, Nick, we'll start with you on this one. Who's your favorite baseball player? You can either growing up, past or present, whichever.
I would say Jeter, just because I always grew up watching him, and I always try to mimic him in the field. I mean, I think he's one of the best infielders out there, especially off the field too. I try to mimic him off the field too. So.
Good. Now you, Kyle, I don't want you to, you're already playing pro ball, so you don't have to say someone right now. You could say, someone as you're growing up. But
no, I mean, there's so many big leaguers that are so talented these days, and a lot of guys that there are to like look up to, like people who are really good on the field and off the field and do a lot off the field. Now, my favorite player, this is just because I grew up watching him play. I've never seen someone hit like this. It's Barry Bonds. Regardless of the steroids or not, whatever, I don't care. The purity of his swing and hitting. If you watched it, I grew up watching it. My dad used to take me to San Francisco all the time. I grew up at that stadium. I watched him get crowds on their feet to watch him hit. He would get walked and he wouldn't care. He would take it and he would just be patient, and I think he is one of the greatest hitters to ever play the game. And if not the greatest hitter. So he's my favorite player, regardless of everything else, but purely playing wise, that is my favorite player.
Well, I'm with you on that one. I'm a Barry Bonds fan. I grew up watching him too. So, it's hard to see that guy play every day and not idolize him. So,
Yeah.
So Kyle, keep going with you right here. What is the weirdest superstition you've seen? I'm sure you've seen some pretty good stuff.
I can't say most of them, but I will say this one. I'm not going to drop the name, but I had a teammate, possibly, you'll never know, who wears a thong, a woman's thong, under his jockstrap, not over it, under his cup, every single game.
Yeah.
I don't know how he moves in it. I don't know how he moves.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. What about you, Nick? What do you got?
I would say senior year. I think it was senior year, but Kevin Pence or Connor Robinson didn't wash their socks for 30 games, and they wore the same exact
That's
sock,
nasty.
which is the grossest thing I've ever seen. But
So who was next?
Well, and ended in a dog pile. Ended in a dog pile.
Yeah, it
That's
ended in
right.
a dog pile.
I mean, yeah, if it works, right? If you're dog pound end the season, I guess it's worth it at that point. Kyle, or actually, we'll start with you, Nick. What is your favorite baseball moment or biggest baseball moment? Whether it's you hitting a home run, whatever it might be. What's yours?
I would say playing in the CCS championship my sophomore year and ended up winning it in dogpiling. I just think dogpiling in front of all those fans at the end and winning it all was the greatest moment for me.
Who'd you guys play?
Sarah,
Padres.
right? Yeah.
I just seen a cool two cool pictures of Barry Bonds and a Sarah Padres jersey recently. It's just kind of
It's crazy.
favorite baseball moment in your career so far.
Well, I have a lot of them. One that's very recent to me that I will hold for the rest of my life is we were on a little bit of a backstory. We were on a pretty big losing streak in low A this last year. I think we lost like 6 or 7 games in a row. And the 2 games before this night both went into extras, and they were heartbreakers how we lost. So the team wasn't doing well. The vibes weren't the same in the clubhouse. People were getting frustrated. And we were in another extra inning game, and it was, I think, the 11th or something like that. Everybody wanted to go home. Everybody was tired. Nobody wanted to keep playing extras, and nobody would finish the game. And they ended up scoring in the top of the 11th. I think they scored 2 runs to put them ahead 2. And I came up with 2 outs, runners on first and second base. And before I walked up to the plate, I looked at my manager who was in the dugout, not coaching third. And I looked at my entire bench. I go, this game's over. And I walk up, whether or not they knew it was going to be over because I was going to get out or hit a homer. I walked up to the plate and went 3-2, battled for like 3 or 4 pitches. And he threw me a hanging slider, and I hit it like 40 feet over the fence. And I didn't leave the box. Everybody was jumping up. And then we ended up going on a little like win streak. And it was super cool. Like, I never felt that. That was my first walk-off homer. The feeling was electric. My clubhouse was all over it. We had a really good night, like, in the clubhouse. It kind of just brought the energy back into the team, and it was super fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, I guess that brings in the next moment. The next question: what was the walk-up song when you're walking up to the plate?
Oh, Do You Feel the Buzz? It's called "The Buzz" by Hermitude. I've had that since my freshman year of college. Got voted best walk-up song freshman year of college.
And you've just been riding it out.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's my walk-up song. I can't change it.
Awesome.
It's my superstition.
Good. Yeah, that is a superstition. So what you got, dude?
So we got to choose 3 here at Cal Poly: Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday.
Okay.
Sunday was The Rock, and I think my favorite one was Sweet Dreams by Eurythmics. Sweet Dreams Are Made of This.
Okay.
I'm starting to think whatever Bo Bichette's walkout song is, it's got to be Nick Maricon's walkout song. Because
I played or his younger brother, maybe. He was a first rounder for the Yankees, is in the Nationals organization now. I just met him. Dante Bichette.
Oh, really? Junior.
Older
then.
brother. Older brother. Yeah.
Older brother. Yeah. He's a really good dude.
Oh man. Last question for you guys. We'll start with you, Kyle. If you weren't a baseball player, what sport would you be playing?
Oh man. Well, I was bad at basketball. I was even worse at football. I'm gonna have to go with ping pong.
Ping pong.
I'm
Oh,
pretty good at ping pong.
Careful. Hey, careful.
You careful. I got you.
I don't know, man.
I don't know if you can hang.
There's only 3 things I'm good at. I've said it the whole time: baseball, talking trash, and ping pong.
Hey,
Other than that, I'm not good at anything.
You're looking at the next version of you right there.
2.0.
You don't. You don't want that. You don't want that.
No, you don't want that in your life. You know that.
What about you, Nick? What you got?
I grew up playing baseball, basketball, and football, but I think basketball and football are just not. I don't think so, but I would say golf. Yeah, I'd definitely
Okay.
make it to the PGA Tour.
You had no chance.
That-
No.
I
That's a
bet you
typical
smack
baseball
the
answer,
golf
though.
balls.
Let's put it this way. I golf right-handed. I swing a baseball bat left-handed. I golf right-handed. I'm still better than Nico at golf. Opposite-handed swing.
I
I'm not
honestly
gonna say anything because
cannot even picture
Yeah, he's not
Kyle
arguing.
playing golf.
Oh no.
So
you
the
can't.
question is, who's broke more clubs? I already know the answer to that one. Yeah, 100%.
And windows.
100%.
And windows.
All right, guys. Hey, I really appreciate you taking the time and sitting down with us. Always great seeing you guys and saying hello. Hopefully, when this is all over, get a chance to throw you boys some BP and let you guys let it fly a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, boys.
Anytime, Bart.
Take care.
thanks,
All right,
Bart.
All
Take
right.
care.
See you
Later.
guys.
See you guys.